Hello there, Armstrong families. This is I, Mr. Sorensen, coming to you with some important information about drop-off and pickup here at Neil Armstrong Academy. As you can imagine, there have been many changes to our procedures here in order to create a safe environment for all students for COVID-19. Of all of the times in the day that we're going to have to make adjustments, I think probably early morning drop-off is going to be the most significant change. So I wanted to give you some information about exactly what that would look like, what those procedures will entail, and I will have a Facebook Live at some later point next week to answer any questions that people might have about pickup and drop-off. But here's the brief primer. First of all, we know that one of the best ways to mitigate the spread of disease is to limit the duration that people are in a certain environment. The magic number is times less than 15 minutes. To that end, we are going to ask parents to kind of cut it close when it comes to dropping off students in the morning. Our buses are generally not here too long before the school bell starts, and we're going to hope that the people who are dropping off by car will follow the same thing. Again, we have a very relaxed attendance policy, so if that results in the occasional tardy, it's really not that big a deal. We just want people to be safe. So please don't drop your kids off excessively early in the morning. We have some people who drop off their children 45 minutes to an hour early. That's just not going to work really well because the kid's going to be really bored during that time. More on that in just a moment. We're going to ask parents to drop off as close to that morning bell as possible. So please kind of try and time your run just so that there's not a lot of extra time there before. Now our start time is 8:35. We won't have any supervision on the playground until 8:20. Okay, so that means that we absolutely can't have students here before 8:20 because there's no supervision. But the closer you can cut to that 8:35, then the better off we're going. So students have been used to coming in the morning and playing a little bit on the playground before the school day starts. We are going to be using our playground this year for recesses, but at recess we're limiting the number of students on the playground at any time to one grade level at a time. We can't make that same assurance before or after school, and so we are not going to be using our playground before school or after school. Instead, we're going to ask students to proceed directly to their designated line-up area, which is shown on this handy-dandy map. So you can locate where that grade level lines up on this handy-dandy map. We will have teachers out starting the very first day of school to direct students where to stand in line and how they will stand in those lines. We encourage people to go straight to that lineup area and stand in line and wait to be led in the building. This is one of the reasons why we're encouraging a late drop-off as possible. It would be extremely boring as a student to stand in line for 45 minutes. We don't want them to do that. I imagine students standing in line for the shortest period of time possible, waiting to be led into the building. But letting them play on the playground is just simply not an option that's going to work for us, so they'll be standing in the line. We know that masks are a critical component to preventing the spread of any disease, but particularly COVID-19. Now, this is a big one. We are requiring masks at school for students, and we'll send out some more communication on masks later, but essentially all students are required to wear a mask throughout the school day. We are going to ask that requirement for masks take effect the moment the student enters the school grounds. So if they're walking from off of school grounds, the moment they step on school grounds from the neighborhood, they put that mask on. When they get to the crosswalk or whatever, they put that mask on because then we're going to have congregations of students. We're going to do that. Same thing for going home. Keep the mask on until you get home. Okay? If they're riding the bus, they're going to be required to have a mask on before they get on the bus. Okay? So they got to have that mask. And they'll be wearing that mask also riding the bus home. So we're going to ask that they keep that mask on before and after school the whole time. And then finally, if they're being dropped off in a car or picked up in a car, we ask that as they get out of that car, while they're getting out, that they put that mask on before they enter our school grounds. And then that mask will stay on an entire morning before we're going, and then they'll wear that mask until they've been picked up in the car. Once they get back in the car, then they can peel that mask away. They'll have some small breaks throughout the day, such as recess, PE, places where they can have those little breathing breaks and those brain breaks. But for the most part, we're going to ask that from the moment they get on the school grounds in the morning to the moment they leave the school grounds in the evening, that mask remain on for the safety of all those involved. I know that that's going to be a difficult transition for students, but it is critical for student safety and super important to our plan. Wear your mask. We will be training all of the students when they're outside in line to stand right on their designated line, and then they will use something called airplane arms to determine if they are properly social distanced from the people around them. Now, because they're wearing a mask, this won't be quite 6 feet. In the areas where we line up, 6 feet just really isn't an option. But we feel that with the use of masks and the short duration that they'll be out there, the airplane arms will be a good benchmark to maximize safety, but also use our space reasonably. So I'm going to show you exactly what airplane arms looks like. So I am here in Mr. Dodge's room, and Mr. Dodge and I are going to show you what airplane arms would look like in a line. So if I were standing in line, I would take my arms and put them out like an airplane, like that, and he's also going to put his arms out like an airplane. And if we can't touch each other with our airplane arms, then that means that we're socially a correct distance apart while we're in line. If I can touch him with my arm, we'll do that. So just use your airplane arms when you're standing in line to determine if you need to spread out a little bit more. You don't need much more space than that. Mr. Dodge, that's actually pretty close to 6 feet, so that's pretty good. That's what we mean when we say airplane arms. So we're using airplane arms when we're lining up the lines. The biggest change to our drop-off and pickup procedures, though, will be out here in the front. A large percentage of the students who attend here at Neil Armstrong Academy are dropped off by loving family members in their automobiles in the morning. And that has gone not terribly smoothly in the past, but we have a significant change that we're making to reduce congestion of both cars, but most importantly, reduce congestion of students and to make that flow go more smoothly. Essentially what we have is a whole bunch of people who want to park right in this area and drop off because it's the most convenient location for their students to walk. But unfortunately, it creates a great deal of congestion here, which is not going to work out well in our plan. So we will be putting out signs along this entire pickup area here that will be alphabetical. And the idea is that students will be dropped off at a designated drop-off / pickup zone based alphabetically on the first letter of their last name. So if my last name is Sorensen, which it is, and I drive up to school in the morning, I, as a Sorensen, am going to look for the sign that has the letter S on it, and that area around there is my designated drop-off and pickup zone. We'll have those signs out for the first few weeks of school until people get a feel of where that designated zone is, and then eventually the signs will be able to go away because people will have developed the habit of where their lineup drop-off area is. Now, unfortunately, for many of our patrons, that's going to place them further away from the ideal locations than they are used to, and we're going to ask for people's cooperation. The students are going to be asked to walk just a little bit further, but it's not an unreasonable distance that they'll be walking. They can go around that side of the building if they're closer that way. They can go around this side of the building if they're closer this way. But the idea is that we really do need to use those designated zones to drop off. Now, to help guide in that procedure, we're asking parents if you'll please write your name on a piece of paper with a nice big fat marker so we can see it, just the last name, and throw it on the dashboard of your car. That will allow us to help direct you to the appropriate drop-off and pickup location until such time as you and your students have established a routine. We are not planning on moving those locations. They'll stay the same throughout the year, so that will just become your drop-off and pickup zone from here until the end of the year.